Welcome to our Social Engagement and Community Participation Implementation module for adults with serious mental illnesses. This module builds upon previous lessons in this series and includes targeted outcomes developed from the Social Functioning Scale and the Temple University Community Participation Measure. Outcomes include increasing the frequency of community participation, social engagement, and natural supports. This 12-week intervention draws upon components from a virtual reality intervention and a supported participation intervention called the Independence Through Community Access and Navigation, or ICANN, both of which were implemented for individuals with serious mental illnesses. Let's talk about specifics of the intervention. It's recommended that the intervention be implemented by a certified therapeutic recreation specialist, as these are health professionals trained to help individuals with SMI to achieve goal-related health outcomes, such as community participation and social engagement, through the use of leisure and recreational activities. In the reading, there's a table that shows the recommended timeline for the intervention, which occurs over 12 weeks, as well as intervention activities and targeted outcomes. While the sequence of the phases should be followed, the timeline may be adjusted, as the intent is for the intervention to be flexible based on the consumer's needs. Some phases may require one session, and some may require 3 or more sessions. Sessions are typically held twice per week, starting with 1 hour and progressing to 2 hours. Intervention activities can be divided into the following categories: interest identification, preparing for participation, active participation with the RT, and active participation with natural supports. Implementation considerations draw from the planning phase of the API process. The activities outlined incorporate components covered in our planning module, including barriers and facilitators, natural supports, and welcoming spaces. These components have intentionally been incorporated into the intervention. For the interest identification phase, the RT will support the consumer to identify participation interests by administering the TUCP. The RT will then guide the participant to identify features of welcoming spaces by prompting the client to consider physical, sensory, social, and activity characteristics which they find personally welcoming. Existing natural supports will also be identified for future co-participation. Then, the recreational therapist will support the participant to choose a goal area or location in which to increase community participation frequency. Preparing for interactions in the community includes travel training, a peer support group, and virtual reality components. Travel training can expand the consumer's knowledge of public transportation and minimize potential community participation barriers by including public transportation resources and developing skills such as route planning and using travel apps. The Welcoming Spaces peer support group provides an opportunity for the participant to increase social engagement and connect with and develop natural supports. While the group may be facilitated by an RT, it's ideal for the peer support group to be consumer-run and occur at a community location like a cafe or library. The purpose of the group is to focus on community participation experiences, including goals and struggles, in order to develop peer support. The virtual reality component consists of 3 parts. In part 1, the RT and participant will explore the surrounding community on a smartphone, tablet, or computer via the Google Street View app in order to provide an opportunity for the participant to become familiar with the area before active participation. Part 2 involves an exploration of the identified participation location, while Part 3 involves practicing social interactions that will be used when visiting the location. During co-participation, the RT and the consumer will travel to the identified area. During this session, the RT should provide feedback and prompt the participant to practice social interaction skills. As sessions progress, the consumer will increasingly take the lead on planning for participation, such as route planning, scheduling, etc. After co-participation with the RT, participation support will begin to shift to identified natural supports who will be involved in co-participation sessions. After the participant has been attending the peer support group for several weeks, the RT should support them to make a plan to invite a peer for co-participation in the community in order to increase independent community participation and develop natural supports. There are program logistics that may need to be considered throughout the intervention. For instance, a smartphone, tablet, or computer is necessary to implement the VR component. Accessible transportation may be needed depending on the consumer's abilities, and the RT may need to coordinate transportation schedules and routes with the consumer. Lastly, be sure to consider financial resources. It's suggested that the RT and consumer aim for free programs or those that are offered at reduced costs. The RT should be aware of local programs and community resources so they can schedule times for participation based on the consumer's availability. Additionally, the RT will need to coordinate with the consumer's existing support networks for co-participation, along with the consumer and community activities. Further, the RT should consider the availability of welcoming spaces and peer support groups, or the possibility of facilitating a group that match the consumer's availability and schedule times for participation. In this module, we reviewed the implementation process for a community participation and social engagement intervention, which includes components of virtual reality, supported participation, and peer support for consumers with serious mental illnesses. Next up, we'll cover the final step of the API process, evaluation, where we'll look at how to evaluate consumer progress and the results of our intervention.